Hello and welcome to Firstpost Africa, where we get you the top stories from the continent and from across the world. I'm Joshua Barnes, coming to you live from the Firstpost studios. First, let's take a look at the headlines. Taiwan welcomes US President Donald Trump's decision not to publicly reference the island after his call with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, describing it as the best result for Taipei. The Philippine Navy reports at least 30 Chinese vessels swarming inside its exclusive economic zone in the West Philippine Sea. This as Manila's ties with Beijing continue to remain tense in the wake of overlapping claims in the South China Sea. French President Emmanuel Macron says the US peace plan to end the Russia-Ukraine war needs improvement. Macron says the current plan would be acceptable to Russia, but not Ukraine and most of Europe. The UN says militant attacks and instability in northern Nigeria are driving hunger to record levels, warning that millions could go hungry in 2026 as it risks running out of funds due to US aid cuts. And in London, protesters take to Parliament Square, calling for a wealth tax on the UK's super rich ahead of the scheduled annual budget tomorrow. Hello and welcome. We start today in Sudan, where the head of Sudan's Rapid Support Forces, or RSF, says his paramilitaries will immediately enter into a 3-month humanitarian truce. This comes amid intensified global efforts to end a more than 2-year civil war between the RSF and the Sudanese army, which has ravaged the northeast African nation.
In response to international efforts, including the initiative of US President Donald Trump and the Quad mediators and the African Union and IGAD, we are announcing a humanitarian truce providing for a cessation of hostilities for 3 months.
This announcement follows peace proposals put forward by 4 mediating nations: the United States, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates, known as the Quad. A proposal earlier this month included plans for a 3-month truce, allowing vital aid and respite for tens of millions of Sudanese people. It was then to be followed by peace talks aiming for a longer-lasting peace agreement. The RSF had accepted that proposal, but the Sudanese army declined, stating the war is for survival. A new US-backed ceasefire proposal was also rejected by the Sudanese army on Sunday, with a military leader calling it the worst deal yet. Sudan's army chief accused the Quad of bias, alleging that the UAE has been supplying arms to the RSF, something Abu Dhabi has denied. He also suggested that the US proposal aimed to weaken the Sudanese army, while allowing the RSF to maintain territory it had seized. So this statement from the RSF chief appears to announce a unilateral ceasefire. However, the US envoy to Africa has thrown the truce announcements into question, stating that neither warring side had accepted the latest peace proposal.
We appeal to both sides to accept the humanitarian truce as presented without preconditions. We would like them to accept the specific text that was presented to them.
There has not yet been a response from the Sudanese army. Now, the momentum towards peace comes at a time where the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces have stepped up their attacks in the Kordofan region. This after capturing a last Sudanese army stronghold in the Darfur region, El Fasher, which was handed the RSF and their allies control across the west and much of the south of the country. Meanwhile, Sudanese army has control of the north, east and central parts of the country, including the capital Khartoum. The RSF have been accused of brutal attacks on civilians in the wake of their capture of El Fasher. But the toll of this civil war has been felt across the country. Tens of thousands of civilians have reportedly been killed. 12 million people have been displaced. Food shortages have led to mass starvation, impacting much of the population. And both sides have been accused of committing atrocities, including mass killings, religious executions, and the rape of women and children. The RSF announcement is another step in the path towards a lasting peace. But the comments from Masad Boulos bring further confusion and uncertainty. This for tens of millions of Sudanese people who are in the grips of what the UN calls the world's worst humanitarian crisis. People who are desperate for support and living in fear of potential persecution. And for more on this, we have with us Meki El-Maghrabi, a Sudanese consultant and former diplomat to the US, joining us live from Cairo. Meki, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Joshua.
So we've heard this statement from the RSF chief, implying that a 3-month truce is now in effect. But comments from the US envoy to Africa have thrown that into question. What is your understanding of the current situation on the ground?
Yes, the US envoy, Museveni, said that nothing happening on the ground. And that is true because just 3 hours after the RSF militia declared the truce or the ceasefire, they attacked the city of Baba Nusa. And before Museveni, the US envoy, the Secretary of State, Mark Rubio, said that RSF, they declare the truce or the ceasefire, but they are not committed. They say things, but they do another things. And the most important thing is that he said they cannot be committed because the nature of the militia, the tribal nature, the mercenaries that they are get paid for that, they don't want to stop because now they are making money out of this conflict. So regarding the situation on the ground, the RSF is just making a ceasefire in front of cameras and just a PR, political PR response to United States and others, but nothing happening on the ground. The local communities confirmed again and again that the attacks on civilians continued and the crimes continued, and US itself confirmed that again.
Meki, the Sudanese army have rejected US-backed peace proposals. Why is that?
Which proposal? We heard firstly the quartet mechanism statement, and then we hear that there are 22 points. And after that, just as the President of the Sovereignty Council said that before week or 10 days, there was another proposal dissolving the intelligence units and pushing again the RSF in a better position. But in all cases, the US proposals under review usually, and the things that I'm sure that rejected by 100% is not the content of the proposal or having discussion bilateral with the United States. The things that is totally rejected by Sudan is having UAE as member of the quartet and mediator in the Sudanese issue, because it is part of the attack on the Sudanese people.
Meki, I want to look at the broader conflict as we bring our discussion towards a close. Of course, a back and forth that we've seen, an announcement today made by the RSF and then the US rebuttaling that. But we know that tens of millions of Sudanese people are facing the horrors of this brutal conflict. Should both warring parties put the civilian safety first ahead of any other motive?
Here is my point. The issue or the theory of the two parties, actually it is not a theory, it's a media hullabaloo of the two parties is not working with the Sudanese people. Just yesterday I watched a testimony from one of the refugees. She said that they killed her boy and cut it into pieces in front of her eyes. This is what the militia is doing. So claiming that you have two parties or two warring parties, that is you cannot reach Sudanese people with this misinformation or disinformation. The Sudanese people see an army and sovereign government and then a criminal, terrorist, rebellious militia. So in this case, you need to reach the Sudanese people. Also, you need to reach the communities. One of the problems that facing United States and Europe, there is a large community of the relatives of the victims there. And the elections is coming and they will pay for that. Because if you stand against the humanitarian situation in Sudan, and if you support the genocide and the country that fueling the conflict in Sudan and supporting the militia, that will face the people in the nearest election, being in the United States, being in Europe, being in other country.
Meki El Maghrabi, thank you ever so much for joining us and providing the insight there.
Thank you.
Let's now shift our focus to Uganda, where the political temperature is heating up fast. The man challenging President Yoweri Museveni, who has been 40 years in power, has just pulled one of the biggest campaign crowds Kampala has seen in years. Robert Chagulanyi, better known as Bobi Wine, took the capital by storm. Tens of thousands lined the streets, waving flags, climbing rooftops and running alongside his convoy. The 43-year-old musician turned politician is now the main face of Uganda's opposition. Wine's convoy swept through the suburbs despite a police order restricting rallies to controlled areas. Security forces were deployed heavily along the route. Tear gas was fired at one location in an attempt to break up the crowds. Before the rally, Wine visited a maximum security prison where several of his party officials and supporters are detained. And when he finally spoke to the crowd, the message was blunt.
We come here, but not for the usual politics. We come here to ask for your vote, but not the usual vote. We come here because we are into what we call a revolution. Our main aim to remove Museveni from the presidency.
Now, for many in Uganda, especially the youth, Wine represents something deeper than a presidential candidate. They see him as a chance for a reset, a government that listens, and a system that works for them.
Without a doubt, I am going to vote him because he is on the right track, and additionally, he is promising a new Uganda, with fresh ideas and a fresh Uganda which gives liberty to speak freely. That's the fresh Uganda that he promises us.
I support Bobi Wine for the reasons below. When we, the women, go out to look for jobs, we are demanded to pay connection fees. So what I believe is that when Bobi Wine gets into power, he will bring change and we won't have to pay connection fees to qualify to get a job.
And this isn't Bobi Wine's first attempt at the presidency. In 2021, he lost to Museveni in an election filled with allegations of fraud, intimidation and violence. He has been arrested multiple times and has accused security agencies of torture. And tensions are still high. Museveni's son, the army chief, has repeatedly threatened Wine online, at one point suggesting he would behead him. Wine says he does not take those threats lightly and that there had been multiple attempts on his life. He claims there have been targeted attacks and killings linked to the state.
There's been a wave of murders, state-sanctioned murders. In November, there was a massacre. More than 100 people were killed, although President Museveni mentions only 54 killed by the police and the military, shot, execution style. So it has been more or less of a war zone.
And the crackdown isn't limited to Wine. Earlier this month, those who attended one of his rallies were arrested. They were kept in Ugandan custody for 38 days and were allegedly tortured.
We were being kept handcuffed day and night. I was tortured on the second day during interrogation. I was removed from the cell, blindfolded, taken to a room, chained into a chair like this on one hand, one officer at the back, another officer in the front. The one in the front would hit me with blows while I'm being asked because they took our phones. You don't know the outcome, what is going to be. You have been blindfolded, and those people are even making comments. In Kasenyi, somebody told me that they are Special Forces Command, and a Special Forces Command has a very small report, that if he has 5 bullets, it is 5 people. Yeah, they were giving us those kind of psychological torture there.
Another key opposition figure, Kizza Besigye, is not even on the campaign trail. He remains in custody facing treason charges after being abducted from Kenya in November last year and being brought back to Uganda. Several other opposition figures too have been arrested. On the other side, President Museveni's supporters say Uganda needs continuity and stability, not disruption. They credit him for bringing peace after the brutal regimes of the past.
I'm so happy because my president, we gave him back, we have brought him back into his chair. So he's our president. So I'm so happy.
Uganda votes in presidential elections on January the 15th next year. Museveni has already secured his party's nomination. Bobi Wine is officially on the ballot as well. Ugandans now face a defining choice: stay with a leader who has ruled for nearly half a century, or hand the future to a generation demanding change. Another African country in the election spotlight is Namibia, not because of policy debates or campaign ads. On November the 26th, voters head to the polls for local elections, and one name is drawing global attention: Adolf Hitler Unona. At 59, Adolf Hitler Unona is a long-time councillor with the ruling SWAPO party. In 2020, he secured about 85% of the vote, and he is widely expected to win his constituency on Punja again. But it wasn't his political profile that pushed him to headlines. With a name identical to the German dictator, it surely catches the eye. But Unona says the name came from his father. He insists he has nothing to do with Nazi ideology.
My father gave me this name Hitler. He didn't understand what the name Adolf Hitler stood for. When I was young, it was just a normal name. Only as a teenager did I understand that this man wanted to conquer the whole world.
And Unona says it's now too late to change his name, as it appears on all of his official documents. In Namibia, German-sounding names aren't exactly rare. The country was a German colony until 1915. German-named towns, communities, and even names still quietly exist. So while the name raises eyebrows globally, locally it has a different context. The social media has had their opinion. On X, one user said only in 2025 can Hitler winning somehow not be the worst news of the day. Another user wrote, Johnny Cash's song Boy Named Sue was about a father naming his son Sue to make him grow up tough. This guy's parents went even further. But behind the name and the jokes, there is serious politics. SWAPO has governed Namibia since independence in 1990, but its grip has loosened lately. The party lost control of 30 major towns in recent elections. For Unona, his seat is in the rural north, where SWAPO still holds strong. Early projections say he's likely to win again. What happens if he wins? Well, he stays on in the regional council. His name may generate headlines abroad, but his voters say they are focused on issues like jobs, services and development. But the global fascination of his name means his victory won't be local. It'll surely be one of the quirkiest footnotes in political news. So, Namibia votes on November the 26th, and one man's name may turn heads. But in his own words, his campaign is just about his constituency and not world domination. And our final story tonight tracks a massive aviation disruption, one that began thousands of kilometers away but quickly spilled into India's skies. For the first time in nearly 12,000 years, the Hayli Gubbi volcano in Ethiopia's Afar region erupted on November the 23rd, spewing a towering column of ash almost 14 kilometers into the sky. The eruption blanketed nearby areas like Afdera with fine volcanic dust. Authorities recorded moderate tremors around Erta Ale, another active volcano just kilometers away. But the real impact was felt far beyond Africa. The ash cloud raced across the Red Sea, moved over to Yemen and Oman, and by Tuesday had swept into Pakistan and northern India, prompting one of the widest aviation alerts issued this year. The Indian Meteorological Department confirmed that the plume entered from the west and passed over Gujarat, Rajasthan, Delhi, Haryana and Punjab before gradually drifting towards China and the Pacific. The India Meteorological Department said the ash cloud was set to exit the Indian airspace by 7:30 p.m. local time today. The Directorate General of Civil Aviation, or DGCA, immediately issued a safety advisory, ordering airlines to completely avoid ash-affected routes and altitudes. It warned that volcanic particles can severely damage aircraft engines, sensors and cockpit visibility, leading to widespread flight impacts across the country. The DGCA has also directed all airlines to immediately report any suspected ash encounters, including abnormal engine sounds, changes in performance, or smoke and unusual odours inside the cabin. Carriers have been told to keep round-the-clock surveillance through satellite imagery, wind patterns and updated volcanic ash bulletins, as even tiny particles of ash, glass or rock can severely damage engines within minutes. At Delhi's Indira Gandhi National Airport, the impact was immediate. Several international departures, including to Hong Kong, Dubai, Jeddah, Helsinki, Kabul and Frankfurt, faced long delays as the air traffic control redirected flight paths and slowed operations for safety. IMD forecast models showed ash influence across the entire northwest this afternoon. For now, regulators are urging airlines to remain on high alert, recheck routes and factor in extra fuel for possible detours. Air India confirmed that it has cancelled at least 11 flights since Monday. Akasa Air also called off multiple flights, particularly those connecting to West Asia, including Jeddah, Kuwait and Abu Dhabi. India's response to the latest crisis follows global aviation protocols, shaped by past eruptions like Iceland's 2010 event that shut down European airspace. The eruption thousands of kilometres away has once again shown how quickly global airspace can be disrupted by natural events, and how even a single volcanic eruption can bring air traffic across continents to a sudden halt. That's it on the show for today. We will see you again tomorrow at the same time. Until then, thank you for watching.
Straight into the roof of the net. Nice one. Straight down the middle. So a good performance.
Hi, you're watching Firstpost. I'm Rupa Ramani. Let's get started. Right on the show today.